praise your name, I will praise your name. When times of need carry on, I will praise your name, I will praise your name. Though darkness falls all around, I will praise your name, I will praise your name. If I forget what I found, I will praise your name, I will praise your name. For you are faithful, Lord, you lift my head. You're my provider, you're my strength and joy. I'll trust you, Lord. I'll worship you. I love you, Lord. I'll honor you. Lord, I will lift up my soul. I will praise your name. I will praise your name. If I feel lost and alone, I will praise your name. I will praise your name. Though I may labor in vain, I will praise your name. I will praise your name. Through all the heartache and pain, I will praise your name. I will praise your name. For you are faithful, Lord, you lift my head. You're my provider, you're my strength and joy. I'll trust you, Lord. I'll worship you. I love you, Lord. I'll honor. I will trust you, Lord. I'll trust you, Lord. I'll worship everything I say. I love you, Lord. I'll honor you. I'll trust, never let me go. I'll worship, never let me down. I'll love, forever I will love you. I'll love, I'll trust every hour, every day. That's why I worship you. I will praise you, Lord. I will honor you. Lord, I will lift up my song. I will praise your name. I will praise your name.
Hallelujah. Let Lord Jesus Christ shine forth. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are going to watch us in the future, since this is the pre-recording session. We do hope and pray that you are all very much loved, feeling very much loved by our crucified and risen Lord. So, this evening, it's going to be evening session for you. I do have on Skype Islamic Clarity. Peace of Christ be with you, brother.
Peace of Christ be with you, sister.
How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
By God's grace, I'm good, thank you. What have you been up to? How was Christmas or how was Incarnation Feast for you?
It was very good. It was very good. I was able to spend some time with my family, and yeah, it was a very blessed time. Yeah.
Good. So, um, if it is the time of Incarnation Fest, that means it is almost end of the year, and I think
Mm,
in 2 days it's gonna be end of the year.
yes.
So what I thought is I ask you to join me in this pre-recording session in the intention for you, since you've got the like whole knowledge of what's happening in Muslim missionary world. You've
Mm,
got the whole knowledge of that, and I thought you can just share with us some of the things Lord has been doing in Islamic world, especially in the life of Muslim missionaries or Muslim academics.
mm.
So, what have you got for me?
Yeah. So a lot
Actually,
happened.
actually, sorry.
Go ahead.
Before I let you to kind of summarize what we are gonna do, why
Yeah.
don't you just tell us little bit about you? I did have you when my life is like little bit more normal.
Sure.
In case some of my audience still don't know you, that will be just
Absolutely.
shameful. Why don't you first introduce yourself to us and then we take it from there, brother?
Sure. So I'm Islamic Clarity, and the goal of my channel and online social media presence with Islamic Clarity is to make Islam's teachings clear to the world in English. So one thing I found when I was talking to my Muslim friends is one person would say, "This is what Islam teaches," another person would say this. The progressive people would say this, the conservative people would say that, and I really didn't know what the truth was, what Islam really taught. And so I decided to, dig and to find things, and I realized that pretty much, there's many different types of Islam depending on who you're talking to. And so I found that's very confusing for people, right? If you're trying to understand a religion, if you're trying to understand the second largest religion in the world with over 1 billion followers, it's very important to understand what that religion actually teaches. So the purpose of Islamic Clarity is not to say Islam is good or bad. It's to make it clear. It's to put people on the record and to make it clear what people believe. So, what do you believe about wife beating? Do you believe it's okay? Do you think it's not okay? Do you think it should be done with a toothbrush? Do you think it should be done with
Handkerchief.
a palm? Yeah, or a handkerchief, right? So, what exactly do you believe about this? And so, my goal is to accurately represent Islam. I don't want to misrepresent. I don't want to slander, but I do want the truth about what people believe to be known clearly. And then people can judge for themselves if they believe it to be true or not.
Okay, thank you for that. So I will put the link to your YouTube channel as well as your Twitter account on description of this video. Let me take note because I usually forget those things. And then hopefully beloved ones who want to follow some of your work, they can check you out. Also, dear Muslims who are not very much clear about where does Islam stand on the very basic core doctrine of Islam, I think Islamic Clarity is a good place to go. Not the Quran, not your sheikhs, but Islamic Clarity is a good place to go. So I through scripture I have seen that how the Lord uses his enemies to bring glory to himself. He uses Antichrist today to bring glory to himself, his son, and his spirit. And I think overall my experience in 2020, I have seen how Lord used Muslims to destroy Islam and bring Muslim people to Christ. And I think tonight I'm hoping that you will give us some kind of overview of what is happening in Muslim world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we can go ahead and get started with the first slide. So it says Islam 2020, a crisis examined. So in 2020, we saw quite a bit of crisis in especially the Western Muslim, conservative Muslim and mainstream worlds. And I want to be clear about that. Obviously, the Muslim world is much bigger than what's happening online in the Western English-speaking Dawah world, but it is a very important part of the Muslim world that we are going to be talking about. Go next. So I think we all know this quote that the standard narrative has holes in it, right? It's not an easy yes or no, Aki. It's not wise. It's not wise to talk about these things. And so that was on June 8th, 2020. And I actually, I remember watching that video, and I was watching it in the full interview. This was before, we realized, it became very public and widespread. And I was watching it, and I thought to myself, did he really just ask that question? And then I paused the video and I unpaused it and I said, oh my goodness, he really just asked that. And so yeah, I was very shocked when Dr. Yasser Qadi was talking about this openly and publicly. But the reason why that quote, I think, is so memorable is because it's not just about the Quran, right? It can be applied to any aspect of Islam. The standard narrative has holes in it. And that's something that we're seeing. And that's a pattern that we're seeing. When the standard narrative of Islam is shown to have holes, what are Muslims doing? What is the Muslim response to the holes in the narrative? That is the key question that we're going to be looking at. And that is the key question that drives the crisis that Islam has been having in 2020. Go next. So there are two main battles here, two main battles that we saw in 2020. One was Muslims versus critics, people like Ali Dawa criticizing and attacking the apostate prophet. And then the second, and I think actually even more important battle, was Muslims versus Muslims, right? And in that picture, you can see Sajid Lipham talking about Omar Suleiman versus Daniel Haqiqatjou, a more traditionalist Muslim versus a more reforming traditionalist Muslim, and how they were having conflict about the political activism that Omar Suleiman was doing. So the two big battles that we're going to be talking about are the Muslims versus critics and Muslims versus Muslims. Go next. So who are the players? So first we're going to set the stage, right? We need to meet all the players and understand who they are, and then we're going to talk about the battles. So the players. Go ahead, next. So first you have the traditionalists. These are the more conservative Muslims. They are, generally hold to Aisha's age, being 6 years old when she was married and 9 years old when Muhammad slept with her, consummated the marriage. You have people like Mansour, you have people like Ijaz Ahmed. These are people that you see at Speaker's Corner who are traditionalists. Then you also have Fareed, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and Sajid Lipham in the middle. They kind of form a L there. They are the ones who are actually more conservative. They are the ones who are more vocally critical of the other Muslims. So Fareed, Sajid Lipham, and Daniel Haqiqatjou are kind of like a trio, and they're very active on Twitter criticizing what they see as the too liberal Muslims. You also have Adnan Rashid, and he's also part of this group. But I really want to draw your attention to the right side, to Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa, because they are so interesting. Because even though they are traditionalists in some sense, actually you could also classify them as reforming traditionalists. You could classify them as a little bit more liberal than some of the other people in this on this slide, because they are very much interested in building a big tent, making sure that the Muslims are united, making sure that we don't cause too much division. And so even though they are quite conservative in their theology, they're willing to say things like Muhammad Hijab saying things like we can relocate apostates instead of executing them. So I want you to keep your eye on Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa, because even though a lot of people see them as very conservative, they're actually less conservative than some of these other Muslims. We can go ahead next. Yeah, actually, we can go back really quickly, sister. So another key thing for the traditionalists is when they see holes in the narrative, they deny the holes, right? Like that's their key response. They deny the holes. No. This idea that there's no changes in dots, like, yes, that's true. We're going to defend that. We're going to look, Adnan Rashid had that really detailed video where he said, look, I can read the Birmingham manuscript and it's the same exact Quran, and he's still defending these holes, and it's really fascinating. So that's their main response when you bring up holes in the different narratives. Okay, we can go next. So next you have the reforming traditionalists. These are people who are trying to reconcile the narrative. They're saying, okay, yes, the standard narrative has holes, but we're trying to tweak it a little bit. We're going to try to adjust things. We're going to try not to lose our conservative doctrine, but we're also going to try to address the problems that people are bringing up. So these are people like Yasser Qadi, Jonathan Brown, Yaqeen Institute, the Muslim Student Association, ICNA. A lot of these big institutions and groups fall under this reforming traditionalist category. So these people also believe that Aisha was 9 years old, 6 years old, but their tone is very different. And on things like women coming to the mosque, they tend to be more progressive or humanist in a lot of ways. Go next. And then you have the modernists. These are people who are very proudly, saying we are trying to, update things. And I know I have Dr. Shabir Ali there, and he might not agree with that label. But as someone who is saying Aisha was not 6 or 9 years old and said, she might even be 18 or 17, much older than the Islamic tradition says, I put him under this category. And I think a big thing that distinguishes these modernists are, especially right now with the Quran, dynamic preservation. They're trying to rewrite the narrative. They're like, okay, the standard narrative does have holes in it, so we're going to write a new narrative to try to, fill the holes and to give something new. And so you have Mufti Abu Layth, you have Dr. Hashmi, you have Dr. Dutton, and you have Dr. Shabir Ali. All of these people, a lot of the traditionalists would consider heretics. They would say these aren't even Muslims anymore. They're just heretics. They're just, kafir, basically, but kuffar. But these people would say, no, we actually are Muslims, and we're drawing from the diversity of Islam's history to answer the questions. Okay. Next.
Also, just a quick note on brother. Shabir Ali made a statement that he doesn't believe all Sahih hadiths are Sahih. So therefore, yes, he will go under this category.
Absolutely, absolutely. They're very much more open to, evaluating hadiths in different ways, saying, Bukhari, we don't want to worship Bukhari. We want to look at it in a more holistic method. Let's use reason to evaluate, kind of like the Mutazilites. So yeah. Okay, so then you have the critics, of course, and these are people who are pointing out the holes, right? They're the ones who are saying, well, this is a hole, and that's the hole, and look at this hole. And so you have people like Apostate Prophet and Abdullah Samir, who are coming from an ex-Muslim and atheist perspective, ex-Muslims of North America. Then you have Sneakers Corner Mel, who's doing amazing work looking at, different historical critiques of Islam. Well, did this historically happen? Is this narrative true historically? You have Dr. J. Smith and David Wood, and of course you, sister, and Colin, who are all, pointing out holes and are saying, well, look at this according to your sources. Well, look at this according to the facts. And that's pushing all of the other players that we saw to have to address the holes. Go next. And then, of course, you have scholars, right, who are just looking for facts. And of course, different scholars have their personal biases and agendas. I don't think anyone would deny that. Even as we look here, you see Muslims, we see Christians, we see non-religious people. But their premise is that they are looking for the facts. And so they are in organizations together, and they are trying to understand factually what happened and what the truth is about different narratives and different questions. And I think these scholars are really important because they're producing the academic work. They're doing this work that the critics are then using to point out holes. So the academics aren't as polemical. They're not as, they're not trying to disprove Islam, but the critics are then using this work to ask questions that Muslims might not want to ask. Okay, go next. So here we can see the first battle we're going to look at, okay? Muslims versus critics. What is going on in this battle? Go next. So here are some of the tactics that some Muslims have been using in 2020 to deal with critics, right? These are some of the strategies that some Muslims, I don't want to say all Muslims, but some Muslims have been using. So the first one is debates, right? Like we saw with Apostate Prophet and Muhammad Hijab. So they do public debates to talk about ideas and to try to prove one idea better. The second thing is doxing, right? So you see Dr. Yasser Qadi there publicly putting out information that he believed belonged to Islam Critique, so that people could have that private information, and then that could cause consequences, maybe inciting violence against him. So that's called doxing. And Dr. Yasser Qadi used that as a technique against one of Islam's critics. And then, of course, death. And in this picture, you see Samuel Patty and one of the victims of the Nice attack. These are people who were killed, slaughtered by Muslims, and they were slaughtered because of the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, right? And so basically, you see some Muslims, I want to emphasize, not all Muslims, but some Muslims using violence to respond to critics of Islam. And of course, even for you, Sister Hatun, what happened at Speaker's Corner was another example of violence. You can go next. So the main two weapons that some Muslims are using is Islamophobia and big tech censorship. So what are they saying? You criticizing Muhammad, you saying that Muhammad slept with a 9-year-old, that is Islamophobic, that's hate speech, that's bigotry, and we are going to silence you because we condemn hate speech, that's intolerant, and that's bad. And so they're using big tech like Facebook, like Twitter, like YouTube to say this is hate speech, this violates our community standards, and then they're silencing critics. So I think this is their most effective strategy, the most effective strategy of the Muslims right now. We can go next. And so now we're looking at what some of the critics are doing. So what are two of the main strategies the critics are using? I think they fall under two main categories. The first one is this is morally horrible. So they're looking at something in Islam, like Muhammad sleeping with a 9-year-old, and they're saying this is morally wrong. This is horrible. And they're appealing to that kind of feelings of like, yeah, this is disgusting morally, right? And then the second thing they're doing is appealing to facts. This is factually not true. And this is something that we've seen a lot with Quran Gate, where Muslims were claiming that the Quran has never been changed and it's the same by every dot and letter. And you can see, Dr. Shadi Nasser in his appendix has audio files where you hear people reading these variants that, were rejected by different scholars and how things have changed over time. And so that's just factually not true. So the two main things I see critics appealing to are feelings and facts. And I also want to be clear here, you do have moral facts, but I'm just trying to put it in general terms, appealing to people's feeling of disgust. Oh, wow, this is so horrible. How could Muhammad do that? How could a prophet do that? And also the historical facts. Wait, this didn't actually happen, or this, science doesn't actually work, or that historical claim about, Muhammad just doesn't add up. There's not evidence for it. And so those are the two main categories I see. And so the main argument here is free speech, right? We have the free speech, the freedom of expression to say these things, and the freedom to criticize ideologies and to criticize what one sees as a bad ideology. So that's the main argument that critics are using. Go next. And of course, it comes down to, in many ways, Islamophobia versus free speech. And we saw this with France. Even though this wasn't very big on the online, Dawah scene, this is huge for the world, right? The question of how France is going to deal with Islamic separatism, as President Macron called it, and how France, with one of the largest Muslim populations in Western Europe, is going to combat Islamism and Islamic jihad versus the ability to have free expression, and how you can balance things like trying to integrate people into society while also not infringing on their freedom to practice their religion. So this is going to be a huge battle going forward. And I think in France we see a microcosm or a small window into what this might look like. Now, you can feel free to jump in at any point, sister, if you want to add anything. Or
No,
so next,
it's all good, brother. You are doing very good job.
Yeah. So next is the juicy one. Okay, this is Muslims versus Muslims. This is where things get very, very interesting, as Sheikh Yasser Qadi would tell us. You can go ahead next. So what we see is, first, the critics are putting the pressure, right? People like you, sister, and others at Speaker's Corner are putting things in the faces of our Muslim friends. And they're saying, well, look at this. Like, what are you going to do with this? What are these holes? Let's talk about this. And so the critics are putting the pressure. Apostate Prophet has gone from few subscribers to 250,000 in, I think, 3 years. So a lot of these critics are putting pressure through social media, through conversations with Muslims, on Muslims to deal with the holes. Go next. They're also using scholarship, right? things like hadith criticism from even 100 years ago, works about how the historical critique of Islam's standard narrative, the critique of the standard narrative about the Quran. All of these books that sometimes Muslims might rather not engage with are being brought to the forefront and are being pushed into the consciousness of many lay Muslims. And so that's also something that critics are doing. They're using the scholarship that's not necessarily polemical, but they're using it to ask questions and to point out holes in the standard narratives. And so the next slide I want to spend a little bit of time on, because I think this is a very important slide. So I just want to help us understand what this slide is showing. So this tree represents Islam. Okay, and at the root of Islam, you have the tafsir, you have the Quran, and you have the hadith, right? You have the sayings and reports about Muhammad, the Sunnah, the example of Muhammad. You have the Quran, which is the holy book in Islam, the revealed word of Allah according to Islamic tradition. And then you have the tafsir, which is like the commentary on the Quran. So these are like works by different Muslim scholars like Ibn Kathir, who have written commentary to interpret what the Quran is saying and give it context. And so that's the root of the tree. The root of Islam is these books, these sources, really, and their understanding of these sources. But then you go to the top and you have different branches and you have different interpretations of these same roots, right? So on the most right side, you see Samzi, and then you see Daniel Hakikachu and Farid. And so I intentionally put it so that the rightmost side is the most conservative and the leftmost side is the most liberal. So you have Samzi, who's like very hard Salafi, like Muhammad Hijab, you are a bad Salafi because you are partnering with the other Muslims. You are bad. Then you have Daniel Hakikachu, who's saying things like, Yasser Qadhi, you are a bad Muslim because you are too soft on LGBT issues and all these other things. And then you have Farid, who's saying, you other people are deviants because you're questioning hadith and you're rejecting strong hadith, and that is not okay. Then, so those are the traditionalists I put there under traditionalists. Then if you move up a little bit, you have Muhammad Hijab, who's kind of in between, right? He's kind of in between traditionalists and reforming traditionalists. He still has a lot of credibility in the traditionalist crowds. And I also want to be clear, a lot of Muslim Twitter and a lot of Muslims on social media that you see on channels like EF Dawa and things like that are in this traditionalist camp. So then you have Muhammad Hijab, who has a lot of credibility among traditionalists, but he also said things like we should relocate apostates, right? We shouldn't kill apostates. We should relocate them, which is not very, consistent with most Islamic tradition. Then you have Yasser Qadhi, the king of the reforming traditionalists, right? The great Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, who is, standing, with the holes in the narrative, who's trying to, say, let's, there are holes in the narrative. Let's fix this a little bit. Let's readjust this. I'm writing a paper. I'm working on a paper about it. And then you have Dr. Shabir Ali, who, of course, is saying things like, we should not be killing apostates today. That's just not right anymore. And really rejecting and reinterpreting a lot of Hadith tradition. Then you have Mufti Abu Layth, of course, wearing Santa Claus hats and talking about all sorts of very interesting things. Then you have Dr. Hashmi to the left, and you have Majid Nawaz, who a lot of these people, even the modernists, might not consider a Muslim, but he himself considers himself a Muslim. So basically, that's the tree you have. And I just picked certain people to represent. And then you have on the there with the yellow circle, the critics, right? And they're using this arrow of facts and feelings. So they're poking at the roots. They're saying, hey, what about this? Hey, it says that Muhammad slept with a 9-year-old. Hey, it says that, the facts show that the Quran is not perfectly preserved to the dot. Hey, there's a hole. There's a hole. And if you go to the next slide, we're going to see how these people respond. So you see here the tree is starting to catch on fire. Because what's happening is you have the traditionalists who are then yelling at everyone else. They're saying, there's no holes, stop trying to, what are you doing? Stop trying to ruin our religion. Then you have the reforming traditionalists who are saying, hey, we're working on it. I'm writing a paper. Take my class. I can work, I can develop with you through these questions, and I can help you see how there's really, I can take you bit by bit to introduce you to the facts. And then you have Dr. Hashmi and some of the modernists saying, we're going to bite bite the bullet. We're working on a new narrative. We have to abandon the old narrative. It's unsustainable. It's not good. It's not working anymore. We need to have a new narrative. And then the critics, of course, are saying, well, there's another hole. There's another hole. And the whole tree is really catching on fire, not because of the critics per se, but because of the infighting among the different Muslims and how the Muslims are, attacking each other, really. Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that? I know this, you probably have a lot of.
This is a sensitive topic these days. But I
Yes.
think it all goes back to, yes, there is a fire and it's like causing lots of division in Muslim community.
Yes.
But those stupid claims which Muslims are making publicly, stating, Quran has been perfectly preserved, there is no holes in it. It can all be fixed by simply Muslims saying, yes, for centuries we lie to our ummah. For centuries we teach people that Quran has been perfectly preserved, but deep down we knew, no, there are problems, but we couldn't fix it. Therefore we decided to hide from you. Here's the facts.
Right.
And then it will be all like from that moment, I'm not going to push that anymore, because you just told everyone, yes, you lie to people, and there are problems in the Quran. Quran hasn't been perfectly preserved.
Mm-hmm.
And then conversation will finish, but because they are pushing by, no holes there, I am working on it, no holes, it's just putting more holes in it.
Yeah, and I think you put that very well, sister, because you see people like Dr. Hashmi who are publicly saying, we need to stop saying this. He's publicly admitting like this was not a true statement that Muslims made. It was an argument that just was not true, and we need to retract it, basically. But then you have people like Fareed who are not going to do that, who are publicly saying like, I'm doubling down. I'm not, the standard narrative doesn't have holes in it, right? And so you have conflict within the Muslim community about how to deal with these things. And so it's really going to be fascinating to see how this plays out.
I was telling you, like, just before we went recording, I recently spoke to a Muslim, ex-Muslim, who was simply questioning what is that the phrase holes in the narrative means.
Yeah.
And then he emails the one who is working on it, as well as the one who asked the question. So he emails Sheikh Yasir Qadi as well as Muslim missionary Mohammed Hijab to ask, what is this about? And then they didn't even bother to reply his email.
Yeah.
And then he comes to a Christian and then says, what is it you are pushing to saying there are holes in the narrative? What does that means? Once he hears what the tradition actually has been saying, he turns to me and then says, I don't want to be Muslim anymore because I have been lied to. And none of us wants to be lied, especially when those informations affects our eternity.
Right.
We want to make sure we do our best to be on the right path, because eternity is not like 3 hours or 21 hours in jail. Eternity is like eternity. Very, very long time, brother.
Forever. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So we can go next. So the modernists lead to humanism and atheism, right? So this is what the traditionalists say. So people like Fareed are saying, Mufti Abu Layth, you are leading people to become humanist and atheist. And you see in this picture, queer, Muslim, and proud, right? So Fareed would say, this is what you are causing. You're watering down our religion. You're ruining our religion. This is why you modernists are dangerous. And go next. Then, of course, the modernists are saying, you traditionalists are full of holes. You traditionalists are making false claims that can't be defended. You're making us a laughing stock. You're saying things like, the Quran has been perfectly preserved down to the dot and letter, and that's just factually untrue. And now we're getting destroyed, and people are leaving Islam because of you guys, because you guys have made these false claims, and you're the problem, not us modernists. We're trying to, adapt to reality and adapt to the facts, but you guys are the ones who are holding us back. And then we go next. And then you have the reforming traditionalists who make everybody angry, right? So you have Dr. Yasir Qadi, who, the traditionalists are attacking him. Hey, he's becoming a modernist. He's deforming our religion. And then you have the modernists who are attacking him. He's not going far enough. He's just being wishy-washy. He's not actually, necessarily coming out with something. He's backtracking on what he said. So they get criticized from all sides, and I think they especially get criticized by the traditionalists because these people are harder to label as deviant, right? It's easy to label Mufti Abu Layth as deviant from Farid's perspective, right? He's wearing Santa Claus outfits. Like, this is, what is he doing? But for Yasser Qadhi, he's much closer to orthodoxy from Farid's perspective. So it's much harder to out him. And that's why you saw the holes in the narrative interview be so explosive. When Dr. Shabir Ali said something very similar, very recently too, it didn't matter. No one cared. Dr. Shabir Ali, he doesn't even believe in killing apostates. But Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, oh my goodness, like Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, he believes in Aisha and he believes in all the things that we do. But look here. Now he's saying this, and so that's why Sheikh Yasser Qadhi is such an important person for Islamic clarity. And he's going to continue to be such an important person, not just here, because he is trying to bridge these two worlds. He's trying to bring a balanced Islam for the 21st century. He's trying to bring the best of Western critical thinking and Eastern devotion. He said that on the record. That's one of his goals. And so because he's trying to do that, he's going to continue to do these things that are going to make the traditionalists very angry and also make the modernists maybe feel like, hey, that's all you can do? Come on, like we need to move faster. So there's going to be a lot of tension here.
Can I ask a practical question
Yes,
regarding your slide? So
yeah.
What are those like light blue things on
that actually, I didn't make that. I just snipped this slide from, I believe actually it was Rob Christian on one of his thumbnails. But I don't know what that is.
It looks like this one, brother. I don't know if you can see.
Yes, doing a deep dive.
Yeah, it looks like
Well, it seems like Dr. Yasser Qadhi, he also does, scuba diving. So he's very into the whole diving illustration. He's very
actually, I looked into that. Actually, he's like very, very elementary level. So it's not like don't trust him, okay? Don't trust him to get into the Nile and then figure out the Qurans. Don't trust him on that.
We can go next.
Yeah, let me move to the next slide.
So here are some of the big issues that divide the Muslims. Okay, just a couple of quick examples. You have social issues and you have theological issues. So some of the social issues is having an alliance with the political left, the progressive movement, the Labour Party in the UK and the Democratic Party in America. The tone on how to deal with LGBTQ issues, right? How should we talk about this? What tone should we adopt? Should we be aggressive and harsh, or should we be conciliatory? How to respond to critics. What are the right ways to respond to critics? Should you insult them? Should you dox them? Or is it better just to do very formal debates, very respectable debates? Women in mosques. Can women go to mosques? Can you shake hands with a woman? Different issues like that. And then you have theological issues. The place of hadith. Bukhari Gate, right? How much priority should we be putting on hadith? Can we use human reason to evaluate hadith? The preservation of the Quran, of course. Is it perfect preservation to the dot? Is it preservation word by word? Is it only the meaning preserved? Is it dynamic preservation? Whatever that means. Is it, what is it, right? And then who is a Muslim? This is a huge controversy because this actually goes to the heart of Islam. It's about protecting, the Tawheed, right? Unity of Allah from shirk, from partnering, from anyone associating partners with Allah. And so a huge part of this is to call out people as non-Muslims, takfir, right? Is to say you're not a Muslim. And so the question of who actually is a Muslim, and of course the age of Aisha, another big theological issue. And so now we're going to walk through a bunch of different issues that we saw explode in 2020 and the different Muslim responses. So I'm going to show you how the modernists, the reforming traditionalists, and the traditionalists responded. So go ahead to next. So we have the Omar Suleiman controversy. This was huge in the Muslim world. I think a lot of critics of Islam didn't pay as much attention to it, but this was enormous. Basically, Omar Suleiman did a political march against some of I think President Trump's policies on migrants, and it was an interfaith event. So he had people who were claimed to be Christian and Jews and other people, and they were marching together, holding hands. They poured out oils on the beach and made declarations. It was very, very interesting. And of course, Daniel Haqiqatjou went ballistic, right? He just went crazy in criticizing Omar Suleiman. Omar Suleiman ultimately apologized. Daniel Haqiqatjou said the apology wasn't good enough. It was a mess. It was a huge mess. And it really laid bare for people, that the reforming traditionalists might be kind of deviant and kind of watering down Islam. So we can go next. So we can call this Kafirgate, right? Because they didn't call Omar Suleiman a kafir, but they said the actions he participated in were the actions of the kuffar. I want to be clear about that. So, you had the modernists, like Mufti Abulay said, relax everyone, you guys are all like getting too excited. Then you had Yasser Qadhi, who said he apologized, you neophyte, excuse me, I want to make sure I use the right word. He said, you people are, you haven't studied a lot. You're very ignorant, but you're very zealous, and you guys need to calm down, right? He compared Daniel Haqiqatjou's style to those of the fake iPhones, right? He had a lot of strong words. And then of course you have Fareed, who was saying things like, this is so horrible. This shows how, the leaders are watering down the religion. We need to stand up for the deen. We need to fight in the way of Allah in terms of preserving the truth. So that was the main responses for that controversy. We can go next. Then we had Bukhari Gate, right? This, of course, was not didn't come out in 2020, but we saw some of it flaring up in 2020. And of course, it's basically Mufti Abulay saying, you shouldn't worship Bukhari. You shouldn't treat Bukhari like it's the same as the Quran. And a lot of Salafis do this. And so Mufti Abulay was criticizing them. And he actually was saying things like, you guys are actually insulting the honor of Muhammad. You say I insult Muhammad by wearing a Santa Claus hat, or you actually insult Muhammad because you say that he slept with a child and he did child abuse. So under your theology, Muhammad is a child abuser. You're the one who is slandering the name of our great prophet. And so you see this huge conflict about the place of hadith like Bukhari. You can go next. And so, of course, Mufti Abulay saying, stop worshiping Bukhari. You had Yasser Qadhi saying, she was 9. We have to admit that. We can't get away from that. And then you have excuse me. I was looking at the wrong slide. You have Yasser Qadhi saying things like, take my class, take my class. I'll work through it with you. I'll help you understand the nuances, how to think critically about these things, but also think within the red lines. And then, of course, you have Fareed say, you follow your feelings, you deviants, you're just humanists. You guys are basically following your feelings. You have no standards by which to judge the hadith. And I think Fareed does have some, valid points in what he's saying. And then, of course, we can go next. Another controversy happening constantly is Aisha's age, right? So, you have Yasser Qadhi saying, stop lying about Aisha's age. And again, I'm not sure if this was in 2020, but this controversy is constantly coming up in different ways. We can go next. So Mufti Abulay says, she's older, maybe like even 18 or something. Yasser Qadhi saying she's 9. We have to admit that. She was happy. She herself didn't complain. Why are we trying to complain? And then Fareed saying, yes, she was 9. Exactly. Being very, very dogmatic about the hadith as he is. We can go next.
I just struggle to understand why would a man, especially who is potentially to have daughters, is so proud of their examples to have a sex with 9-year-old child, and then says, yes, we should be very proud of saying she was 9. I find that's very disturbing actually, but nothing surprising in the world of Islam.
So next we have trans hijabi gate. So this was a trans hijabi that Muhammad Hijab hosted on his podcast, and they had a conversation. And basically, Muhammad Hijab was trying to convince his guest that this is wrong, right? That this is wrong according to Islam. But this was a huge controversy. If you go next. So this is actually super interesting because here we saw the traditionalists attacking Muhammad Hijab, who's kind of kind of a traditionalist, but kind of a reforming traditionalist. And we saw that divide, right? We saw people like Fareed, Daniel, and Sajid Lipham actively say, this is a bad idea. You're normalizing this kind of behavior in Islam. Why did you do that? That was unwise. Where's your hikmah, bro? Where's your hikmah? You lack hikmah, right? And then a lot of the people that these traditionalists critique, like Yasir Qadhi, they're too scholarly, right, to get down in the muck and to get into the Twitter beefs and the battles. But Muhammad Hijab went nuclear. Right, he started tweeting like, "Okay, Fareed, so who leaked Yasir Qadhi's emails in the first place, and will that person come forward? And is that haram or halal? And oh yeah, Daniel Hakekachu, you support someone who is basically the next Osama bin Laden. So can we talk about that? And oh yeah, Sajid Lipham, I have dirt on you too." And so he just sent out a series of tweets that really just expose these people, like hardcore expose them. And immediately after that, they said, okay, well, hold on. That's not, okay, we don't need to fight each other. We're all brothers here. We're just trying to help each other. And they all apologized and made up. But you could see in that moment that there's a huge division there. And one thing that Muhammad Hijab said that I think is so important in this controversy is he said, those three people just hate Yasir Qadhi, right? They just want to take down people like Yasir Qadhi. They want to coerce and forced me to join their little gang, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not someone's toy. Muhammad Hijab, he really stood up for himself. He said, I'm not going to just follow along with you guys. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to call people out when I think they're doing something wrong, and you guys are wrong here. And so you saw here the divide between even more conservative traditionalists and maybe reforming traditionalist types like Muhammad Hijab. So I think it's really interesting because a lot of critics of Islam think that Muhammad Hijab is like very conservative, but actually compared to some of these other people, they would say that he's not conservative enough. So we can go next. Actually, and I want to say one other thing about that, if we can go back for a second, sister. I think part of the reason why Muhammad Hijab is like this is because he talks to a lot of people at Speaker's Corner. He talks to a lot of atheists at Speaker's Corner. He talks to a lot of Christians. He talks to a lot of Jews. A lot of these other Muslims, Fareed, Akekachu, and Sajid, they mostly focus on critiquing liberal Muslims. But Hijab is spending more time talking to non-Muslims. So he knows how bad it sounds to non-Muslims when you say that you're going to kill apostates in an ideal Islamic state. He knows how bad that sounds. And so he's changing his view, right? He's literally saying we're going to relocate apostates, and he's using social contract and, Locke to justify it. But and also, of course, drawing on some Islamic tradition that he claims supports that. But basically, you're saying because he's forced to deal with critics a lot, he is actually adapting more to try to soften some of the rough edges of Islam to make it more appealing to those non-Muslims. And I think that speaks to the effectiveness of the work of critics of Islam who are forcing, or not forcing, but kind of maybe causing in some ways Muslims to soften those edges. You can go next.
Since he had a debate with David Wood, and in his debate where he expressed that Allah prays for Muhammad, since then he hasn't been at Speaker's Corner that often because he knows he's accountable for what he said. Therefore, it is easier to just stay back, and then deal with, make kind of argument to go away if you don't talk about it. So
that's what I think is so over. Yeah, that's what I think is so wonderful about Speaker's Corner, because there's that accountability, right? You said it, now defend it, right? Like, we're going to follow up with you. We're not just going to tweet at you. We're going to walk in front of your face and we're going to hold the words in front of you. And I think, that's so important. You have Adnan Rashid, you have Mansour, you have, these people who are there in person, in the flesh, Ali Dawa, Muhammad Hijab, and they can't run away from it. And if they do, it's on camera. And so you just, it's such a beautiful gift. I really think Speaker's Corner is such a gift. So yeah, we can go next. And then, of course, we have Quran Gate, right? The king of the controversies this year. And I love this thumbnail from Fareed because it captures this is a thumbnail that Fareed made. And his videos basically, does the standard narrative have holes? And he's like, no, no, it doesn't have holes. And Fareed is, he's saying like, well, Yasser Qadhi is being too vague about this, which I find very ironic because Fareed is the one who, of course, was the
Link
one
the
who
email.
leaked the emails that Yasser Qadhi was expressing. So I think Fareed has a pretty fair idea of what Yasser Qadhi is talking about, but we'll make a future video about that. But my point here is the controversy, right? The battle between the traditionalist, the reforming traditionalist, and the modernist. And we go next. So you have on the right side Fareed who's saying there's no holes, right? This is all made up. It's all, it can all be explained away by the 7 different readings of Ibn Mujahid and, the different ahruf, and that hadith explains everything. Then you have in the middle Yasser Qadhi. I'm working on a paper that will shatter the arguments of the Islamophobes. Take my class. It will explain everything, right? And so he's working frantically, I think. I shouldn't assume he's frantic, but I imagine he's trying to work very quickly to come up with a paper to explain these things that can maintain orthodoxy while also addressing the holes. And then, of course, you have Mufti Abu Layth and Dr. Hashmi, who I think is going to be a very key player in this. I just made a video on my channel called Dr. Hashmi Explains #the Holes in the Narrative. And basically he's saying we need to bite the bullet, bite the bullet. That's just an expression that means we need to take something that's kind of painful for the greater good in the long run. And so we need to adopt dynamic preservation, stop making such ridiculous claims like dot by dot preservation for the sake of protecting the integrity of the Quran. So we can beat those Islamophobes, we can beat those Christian missionaries, we can beat those critics, and we can finally, stop saying things that are indefensible. So this controversy has been huge, and it's been really just laid bare the different fault lines between these different Muslims. And it's important because it's about the Quran, right? It's about the heart of Islam in many ways. And, if you lose your doctrine of the Quran, if you lose a high view of the Quran, if you lose a view that the Quran is perfectly preserved, what's going to happen to your Islam? Right? Like, what's going to happen to Islam? Like, look at Mufti Abu Layth. He holds dynamic preservation, but in what sense is his practice of Islam recognizable even by many Muslims? And of course, many Muslims would say he's, of course, a Muslim, but this is the question. What is Islam, and what doctrine of the Quran is acceptable for a Muslim? Where are the lines for being a Muslim? We can go next. Then you have #MuslimGate. Samzi, he is, wow. I mean, he's also at Speaker's Corner, so that's, someone you've probably met in person, sister. But he is fierce, right? He's just like, you Ali Dawah, you Muhammad Hijab, you guys are bad Salafis. You are bad Muslims because you are partnering with non-Salafis. You are okay with partnering with Deobandis and Ash'aris and all these other people. And that is not okay. You are corrupting the way of the Salaf, right? You are corrupting Islam. And so there's a huge controversy between them. Even, it was so interesting. Ali Dawah has a clip where he's calling Samzi a cult. He's like, it's blood in, blood out. It's just like a cult. This is a cult. And then, of course, you have the clip of Ali Dawah saying, we'll kill you if, you leave Islam in an Islamic state, and we're proud of that. And so the question is, well, by your own definition, Ali Dawah, are you in a cult? But that's neither here nor there. But this question of who is a Muslim, right? That is a key question, and it's a question that's plagued Islam from the very beginning, right? With the Shia and the Sunni, and this question is going to keep becoming more important. So we can go next. So yeah, you have Mufti Abu Layth who says, it's not my place to say. You have Yasser Qadhi who's saying we of course need to work together, the Sunni and Shia. And then Fareed, who really doesn't like the Shiites and he doesn't like liberals. He actually, before he started trying to respond to Islam's critics, his whole focus was on attacking Shiites. He's saying Shiites are wrong. And then of course you have Samzi, who's even to the right of Fareed, who says only these Salafis, only these very pure Salafis. And that is, and honestly, we could put people even to the right of Samzi. You can put people even to the left of Mufti Abu Layth. And that's the beautiful thing about this tree, is that it's just never ending in terms of Muslims who will continue to call each other out.
Yeah. In many Muslim countries, even like in Turkey, we grew up with the idea you are defined as a Muslim if you are following the Quran and if you are following the Sunnah. That's all.
Right.
We don't grow up in like Shiites are not considered as Muslims.
Right.
Like right now, if I was Muslim, thanks God I'm not anymore. Like Yasser Qadhi, Mufti wouldn't be Muslim category at all.
Right.
Yeah. It's just like how it is changing as the time, like how people are start compromising more and more. It
Yes.
was like very clear 10 years ago. Now it
Hmm.
is like, let's see how much we can compromise.
Right. And you see different things changing this. I mean,
Yeah.
Yasser Qari just had a fascinating lecture that I saw about the Salafis and about how the Arab Spring actually changed Salafism more than
Yeah.
anything else in the past century. Because what you saw was these governments and these other geopolitical factors forcing the Salafis to adapt their theology. A lot of Salafis were like, we're apolitical. We don't do politics. We're just about religion. But then they were kind of forced in some ways to get involved in politics. And so even with all these issues that we talked about, really at the heart of it all is hashtag who's Muslim.
Yeah.
Because how you decide to react to these different issues is going to cause different people to call you a non-Muslim, and then different people are going to reject you, and then all the fault lines are going to keep being exposed.
Yeah.
And so these issues in some ways are only secondary to the division that is being caused among the Muslims themselves.
Even like just thinking practically today, when
Yeah,
someone becomes ex-Muslims and become a Christian, the
right,
moment Muslim missionaries hear that person is Christian now,
right.
he was or she was Muslim before, first
Mm,
thing they will say, oh, were you doing this, were you doing this, were you doing this? If you missed one of those lists,
mm.
then, oh, you were never never Muslim at the first
Right.
place. It's
Exactly.
just like,
Exactly. And that's another big part. Yeah. To
yet
try to
still they want
say
to
that.
kill you though.
Yeah. Yeah. Say they're not real Muslims. Okay. We can go next. So there are many more issues that we didn't even get to talk about and haven't come up yet in 2020, but will probably come up in the future, especially as people request Islamic clarity. Allah gate, the attributes of Allah. Does He have two right hands? Where is Allah? Just the concept of Tawheed. Um, a miracles gate. Did Muhammad do any miracles? Sharia gate. How should Sharia be applied today? Define jihad. Understanding different understandings of jihad. So those are all big issues that are going to continue to require Islamic clarity, because we need to know where people stand on these issues, but it's also going to perhaps cause division among Muslims. Go next. And the wonderful thing is, and one thing I really appreciate about Muslims is they're passionate. Muslims are very passionate about their beliefs. So it's not like Fareed is just going to be like, you know what, we need to stop talking about this. This is too bad, and he's going to let go of the rope. He's going to hold on to that rope. And Mufti Abulay, he's also passionate about what he believes, so he's going to hold on to his rope. And so we're going to continue to see these types of conflicts and tension because Muslims themselves are very passionate.
Yeah,
Go next.
they don't see their ideology as hobby, but they see it as the lifestyle.
Right, right. It's yeah. And then, of course, you have the Islam civil war. So, I put the modernists on the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and that's not to mock them. It's just, a way to represent the four of them. And then you have the three musketeers, Sajid, Farid, and Daniel. And so this battle really happening over the Quran. We can call it the Quran wars. And then you have Yasser Qadi in the middle. He's the chosen one, right? Like he's the one who's causing a lot of problems because he's kind of straddling and bridging both worlds. We can go next. So conclusion. So in conclusion, what are we saying? What is the big takeaways from all of this? We can go next. I think it's really important to love people and clarify ideas. And if you're a critic, you can criticize ideas, but loving people and if you have any critique or anything negative to say, focusing that on ideas and not people. And I think that's really important when we talk about anti-Muslim bigotry, which is obviously not good and wrong, versus Islamophobia, right? Well, Islamophobia, if someone is critiquing, Islam as an ideology, well, isn't that free expression? But obviously, you don't want to, speak discrimination or act in, discriminate against Muslims or have anti-Muslim bigotry, right? So obviously, those lines are going to need to be defined, and it's going to be a big debate. But I think a big thing that people should do is to love people, right? Like I personally love Muslims a lot, and I know that you do as well, Sister Hatun. So to love people and to focus any criticism on ideas. I think next.
You do love them enough to tell them the ideology they follow has holes in it, and you
Mm,
love them enough to tell them actually there is an alternative way that is bridge is already been built by the Son of the Father for you to walk through that bridge. So you love them enough to be truthful to them,
Right.
and you love them enough to tell them there are holes in their ideologies, and that is absolutely okay, because they do the same thing to us.
Yeah, and speaking the truth is the most loving thing you can do. So yeah. Next. So here we have is the website that I am working on. So in America, we have something called voter guides. I don't know in the UK if you have that. But basically it's websites where you have the two candidates and all the issues and where they stand on the issues. And you have quotes from the candidates, so you can see as a voter exactly where they stand. And so that's what the Islamic Clarity website is going to be all about. It's going to have all the different issues. It's going to have all the major leaders and organizations, and we're going to put them on the record for everything that they believe in their own words. And it's going to be, my goal is to be very fair and accurate, but it's to, make sure that everyone can see. So you can just go on this website and type in Muhammad Hijab, and all his stances will pop right up, and you can see exactly what he said, where he stands. You can see the clips from Speaker's Corner of him not answering certain questions. Everything will be there for people to judge for themselves and get that Islamic clarity. And then you can go next. Last but not least, I think the big conclusion is, ask questions and share Islamic clarity. We said that in 2020, we can really summarize the conflicts as Muslims versus critics and Muslims versus Muslims. But I think the best way to continue to get Islamic clarity is ask questions. Ask questions of Muslims, ask questions to non-Muslims. Just keep asking questions and sharing what you're finding. Not just online, yes, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, but also in person, right? Again, I keep talking about Speaker's Corner, but that in-person element has to be there. Have conversations with your Muslim friends. If you don't have Muslim friends, make Muslim friends. Go to your local mosque. Go to these places and engage in real relationships, real conversations with people, because really clarity comes out in conversation. And I don't mean conversations where you're fighting with people per se, but conversations where you're understanding, you're listening, and you're also able to share. So that's all I have for us. But yeah, thank you so much, sister. And that's basically
that is great. That was great. And so lots of things Lord has been doing, and lots of things Lord has been using to take people out of Islam. And especially what I am seeing is, again, Lord is using antichrist individuals, people who are against his son. And in this occasion, the Muslim people, for helping Muslims to give up Islam. And it will be our duty as a Christian, we will step in and then we will ask questions to Muslims, which will help them to think through, which will help them to consider, and then we will give them alternative. Because if we don't give them alternative, and then if we just ask them questions and then challenge them what they believe, okay, someone might leave Islam, and that is good. But our goal as a Christian is we want them to fall in love with our delightful Father. We want them to fall in love with our delightful Son of Father, and we want them to fall in love with the Spirit, because that is the only way they can have eternal life with God himself.
Right.
They can become atheist, but atheism is not the solution to anything. It is only Lord Jesus Christ is the solution to everything. And I think we showed approximate 43 slides tonight.
Yeah.
I don't know, don't take it in a wrong way, but brother, like, your slides are just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And also you are like this, like when people look at you, they would see, oh, he's like very kind, very gentle, but you are just like to the point. That is something I think I need to learn some, and probably some of the beloved ones needs to learn some, because the way depend where you are using. Of course, you will never survive at Speaker's Corner with this like nice kind.
Right, of course. Yeah, different places and different
Yeah.
require different types of communication. Yes, I 100% agree.
Yeah, so you will never survive at Speaker's Corner, but you are doing just amazing work. I just like love just watching those slides and just hearing what you are saying, because in a sense it helps me to fall in love with my God. It shows me
Mm,
how amazing he is.
mm,
But also, maybe this is bad, but it helps me to rejoice to see crush of Islam.
mm.
That might be wrong to say, but yeah.
Well, I think what you said is so true. I mean, like I didn't talk about it a lot in these slides, but all these different conflicts are leading a lot of people to leave Islam. That's
Yeah,
true. And I think especially with Quran Gate, you saw that.
yeah,
And like you said, the question is, like what will they do after that? And that's a very important question.
yeah,
But in Islamic Clarity, just focusing on, it's so interesting that when people get that clarity. Sometimes they move from more traditionalist to more modernist.
yeah,
Sometimes they move from more modernist to leave. Sometimes they move from traditionalist directly to leave. And so you see all sorts of responses from Muslims,
yeah,
and that in many ways is going to continue to shape the critics of Islam, because right now what we're seeing is you're seeing ex-Muslims who aren't necessarily politically conservative. So often it's been the conservatives, like the Conservative Party in the UK, I think the Tories, right,
yeah.
and the Republicans, more politically conservative people who have been critical of Islam and of jihad. But what you're seeing now is people who are liberal, progressive people, like ex-Muslims in North America and these groups that are also being critical. So yeah, basically all that to say, you're right. People are leaving because of this, and when they're seeing these conflicts, like the email that you got, they're realizing that some of their leaders don't have answers to some
Yeah.
of these holes, and that's very, very concerning for them.
I know like easily over 40 ex-Muslims, new beloved ones, just because of the holes in the Quran. Just like over
Wow,
40 easily.
wow,
And
wow,
that's like since August.
wow.
So brother, you expressed that website is coming. When is that?
So much to do. So I'm working on it. I'm just one person, so it might take a little bit of time, but I'm working on it. Actually, one thing that the beloveds can do to help me is to keep sending me videos that they find that are interesting. That's actually been one of the things that's helped me the most, is when people just under a comment on my video, they just say, "Hey, you might want to check this video out. It's about this." And even if you can put the time where it's interesting, that is very helpful, because that helps me just to find different things that people are saying that can bring some Islamic clarity. But I'm working on the website. I'm also working right now on trying to make the holes very simple for people to understand. I'm going through Dr. Shadi Nasser's book and trying to make that very clear and simple for people, so they can talk about the holes in a easy to understand way with their Muslim friends, and
Yeah.
also for Muslims. But yeah, so those are just some of the things. 2021, hopefully we can get a lot done. But yeah, I want to say too, Sister Hatun, like I really appreciate all that you're doing at Speaker's Corner in terms of getting Islamic clarity. I know it's people have
It is my
said,
duty as a Christian, so no need, no need.
yeah.
So you didn't give me deadline, brother. What is your deadline for the website?
Ah, sister, you're pushing me. You're
It's like
pushing me.
I
It's
just
not
want to see
why.
it before I die. So you need to
I
just like get
so
on with it.
yeah, I'll try. Ah, man, I
Have you
it's
got like
I don't want to
more
commit
work
to
to
a
do?
time right now and then not follow through on it, but I'm working, and hopefully it will be sooner rather than later. That's what I'll say.
Like,
I won't
do
be
not.
like Yasser Qadi and say something publicly that I cannot cannot
Yeah,
necessarily explain. It might get me in more trouble later on. So
just
yeah.
like I love to see it before I die. So just like get on with
Oh,
it.
of course,
And
of course. Yeah,
it is.
I know. I think like honestly, I can I have the website domain name. I own it, and I'm working on it. But the thing is, I guess the question is how developed I want it to be
Yeah,
before I
publish
make
it.
it public, right? Because if I just have a little bit of information there, it might just be okay, yeah. But that might be a better strategy than to wait until it's much more populated and professional than to put it out. So it's a nice website. Like the service is helps the website look polished, but just in terms of how much information. And I also want to make sure the information is very accurate,
Yeah,
because I
that's
don't think it's
important.
fair to say someone believes something if they don't believe it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's important. So
yeah.
it seems overall 2020 Lord used to crush in a sense, Islam.
Mhm.
When you kind of look back in a couple of days, because we are
Yeah,
recording this just before New Year, when you
right.
look back in a couple of days, what what can you say Lord has been doing with you and through you?
Mm. Great questions. Yeah, I think, hmm, I think especially with the quarantine, the Lord has been teaching me the importance of um, focusing on Him and making Him the center. There was a sermon I heard that was talking about, our root system as Christians, our root system, and it said, we need to have a buddy system. We need to have that accountability. We need to be, in fellowship with other Christians and believers. We also need to have a sound system, the sound of praise and worship. And I love the way you begin, these videos with worship songs. And also we need to have a solar system where Jesus is at the center of everything that we do. And I think the Lord has really been teaching me, no matter what else you have going on in your life, to keep Him at the center. He has to be at the center, and if he's not at the center, then it doesn't work.
Yep.
Life just doesn't work. So I'm very thankful for that. And as I reflect on that, I want to, apply those truths into my life more and more into the new year as well. So.
Okay. And how can beloved ones support you and pray for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just to share Islamic Clarity. You can be, yeah, just sharing the videos, sharing the hashtags. I know the hashtags might seem kind of like childish, but I think it really helps people to follow the conversation online. And for praying for me, I think just praying for grace for the upcoming year, grace to focus on the Lord and to, yeah, keep everything in perspective. Also, just for my family, for good health, for to love one another well, and yeah, just all those things.
Okay. Thank you very much, brother. My heart goes on the playing the Allah is False God song, but I cannot do that because I think it will give bad impression to your ministry.
Mm,
So I think we will skip that part. But I'm grateful that end of 2020 you made time for us, and then you helped us to go through what has been happening in Islamic Clarity. And
yeah.
there are some materials probably I do hope that some of us never heard it, and we are longing to learn it and use it in our evangelism, because
Mm,
yes, there are fights within Islamic community. Yes, there are fights between Islams and critic of Islam, but our goal is bring everyone and all to Lord Jesus Christ.
mm,
And it will be the same, like if there is a Christianity clarity, it will be the
right.
same thing, like people will put together where DCCI stands on this, what DCCI
Mm,
said versus where Islam clarity stand, and that will be the like
right.
same in-house discussions.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so we wouldn't be
Yeah.
that much surprised. But one of the good thing is people are going to fail. Islamic clarity is going to fail. I am going to
Mm,
fail.
mm,
We will fail morally as well, but our faith doesn't based on him or me. Our faith based
amen.
on Son of the Father. Our faith
Amen.
based on
Amen.
Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And his grace is enough for us to be able to
Amen.
stand again in repentance and turn back to him. So none of your
Amen.
faith, none of people's faith is based on me. No one will give up Christian faith because of me. I
Mm,
do hope that that's the case.
mm,
And no one will give up or question their faith because of Islamic clarity, but we will question our faith because of the teachings of the Bible
mm.
and because the person of Lord Jesus Christ. That is
Amen.
bottom line for us. So,
Amen.
brother, once again, thank you very much for joining us. I do hope that 2021 or 2021 will be year. We will again go through some of the Islamic clarity and then see what we can use in our evangelism in the intention helping people to walk through the bridge Lord Jesus Christ built for them. Have you got last thoughts?
Um,
See how
no, I
gentle
just
I am, like how kind I
Happy
am
New
while I'm giving
Year.
my last words.
Yeah, just happy New Year to everyone, and I think just a reminder to everyone. I love that verse that says, the love of Christ compels me. The love of Christ compels me, and I think it's so important. Yes, people can come up with arguments, people can come up with different points, and you might win an argument, but really to remember. The person that you're talking to, even on the internet, there's always a person on the other side. And so I think just to have that love, and of course, love doesn't just mean being nice to people, right? Love means speaking the truth, but also to have a genuine, like, checking ourselves and always saying, like, do I love this person as I'm responding to them, as I'm talking to them? Do I love them with the love of Christ Jesus? And letting that always be what compels us in our actions, in our words, in our thoughts. And I think that light will shine very bright. And I think many, many people will see that if that's the case.
Yep. And in that note, beloved ones, we will see you in another platform or at Speaker's Corner. Until we see you, may our risen Lord silent you with his love, and God bless you all.
Amen. Bye.